You can have a voice your entire life and still not fully claim it. This is the story of how I finally became the singer-songwriter I had always been, quietly, secretly, but never allowed myself to be. And why this podcast is taking on a new name, a new identity, and a new chapter, while its heart remains the same. Welcome to Singer Songwriter, a space to reconnect with your voice, your music, and the songs waiting to be written. I'm Lainey, singer and songwriter, voice and creativity coach. If you've ever dreamed of writing and singing your own songs, but doubt or perfectionism keeps getting in the way, then grab that notebook full of ideas. It's time to open your voice, trust your sound, and express yourself freely. Your songs are waiting. Let's bring them to life. A very warm welcome. Welcome to all of my returning listeners and all of my new listeners. Welcome to Singer Songwriter. This is the next evolution of Reawaken Your Voice. So I don't know if you've noticed anything different around here. The changes are small, the new artwork, a new description, but even the artwork is very similar. That's because this is the same mission it has always been. We are just going deeper with clarity. If you've listened for a while, this show has always been about rediscovering your voice. And today that journey continues, but in a direction that reflects who I've become and who I'm here to serve. So let me begin by just sharing with you a little bit about my story and how this evolution has come to be. So a lot of this, if you've been listening, you'll know these pieces of my story, but I'm really coming at it from a new lens of fully embracing the identity of singer-songwriter. I come from a background in opera performance, so I lived in that classical world. I had the classical training and I studied voice performance. I got the music degree. I lived in that opera world. And that was such a special time in my life. I really, truly loved that art form and, kind of taking my voice beyond where I thought it could go. And opera was also really fun because, I could put on costumes and I could pretend to be all these different characters with their own stories and their own shadows. But the artist, I could hide behind all of that and never really have to tell my own story or expose my own shadows. I could do it subtly through these other characters that I was playing, tapping into all these different parts of myself and letting it come through the character. And with that came a lot of structure, discipline, this striving for perfection. And in many ways, it kind of felt like I was going through this assembly line in a manufacturing plant where, they were just churning out opera singers that fit the roles that had already been written. So through that training, yes, I knew how to perform. but not how to be me. When I made that decision in Vienna, Austria, in the middle of a voice coaching session, I walked out of that session and I was leaving the classical world. I was walking away from that identity of opera singer because I knew it was no longer aligned. Something else was tugging at me saying, this isn't it. And so I left that world, but in doing so, there was this collapse where I didn't know who I was as an artist anymore. I lost that identity as an opera singer, as a classical musician. And, there's a certain prestige to those titles. And I had grown accustomed to that. A certain level of artistry, it showed hard work and rigorous training, and none of that felt right to me. The competing, the pressure to fit the role. But then as I let go of that identity, if I wasn't that elite vocal athlete anymore, who was I as an artist? Well, I had kind of lost my way and forgotten why I started singing in the first place. Eventually, I stopped singing completely. And a lot of that was grief in losing my dad to cancer. That had a lot to do with that silence, that silent period. But that grief, in tandem with the void left behind by the music I had walked away from, that's what led me inward to reconnect with my voice in a different way, to remind myself of why I started singing in the first place. And what came from that time spent in solitude and in silence were songs, my songs, songs that came from my story, my perspective, my creative voice. Songwriting became my refuge. It was my path to healing, and it was my path to becoming the next version of my creative self. So it wasn't technique, it wasn't performance that brought me back home to my voice. It was songwriting. Songwriting was the refuge that I needed in that time. In the quiet, in the questioning, in the wayward wandering, I always found a place to land inside of my songs. And it felt so sacred, so intimate, a whisper instead of projecting my voice into the back of an opera house or a recital hall, which had such joy in that time in and of itself. But this was different. This was for me. The quiet songwriting in my room, it didn't have the boldness of the spotlight on stage at the opera house. These songs were just mine. They were for me. And maybe someday I'd let them set sail on the turbulent waters, the airwaves of a streaming service, a tangible album. Maybe someday. but sharing them was an afterthought. The writing was for me to reconnect with my voice and my creativity in a way that felt like home, that felt like me. So songwriting was the bridge from silence to song. It was that safe place where my voice could exist again. Songwriting brought me back to my roots. It reminded me of where I had come from. And that is, growing up as a little girl, I was always listening to singer-songwriters. I was writing lyrics in my journals as a little girl. There wasn't much experience behind them, but there was heart. There was still heart in them. I was a singer-songwriter in my heart long before I was refined through classical training and opera performance, which again, I love that time in my life. I was so blessed to experience that kind of training and education. What a gift in my life. And now I get to kind of gather all of that experience and distill it down into this beautiful, simplified path to help you reconnect with your voice and the songs in your heart. So you see, I had no qualms with calling myself a singer, calling myself a performer. But what I really struggled to claim was songwriter. I wrote albums worth of songs. I have written so many songs that it became overwhelming. And I still didn't call myself a songwriter. Singer? Yes. Performer? Yes. But songwriter? Oh, maybe someday. Maybe someday when I release an album. Maybe someday when it's legitimate. But that someday is what kept me small. And it kept the podcast small, too. It wasn't that I wasn't a songwriter. It was that I couldn't see myself as one. But here's the turning point. And it wasn't one moment. It was so many moments, one after another, that I could no longer ignore the truth of how central songwriting is to all of this. If you've been listening a while, you know that I've been learning music production. And, being in the studio, being around other musicians, seeing the ins and outs of the recording process, I realized I already was the singer-songwriter I had always longed to be. It felt like coming home to a place where I really belonged. There was just a cloud of noise that was blocking me from actually seeing it. And I also have mentors and coaches to thank for seeing what I couldn't see and reflecting it back to me so that I could see clearly this podcast was meant to become singer-songwriter. Because songwriting was the thing that reawakened my voice. So this is the journey of becoming the artist you already were. Reawaken your voice was about healing, reconnecting to the joy of making music and coming home to your voice. Singer Songwriter is about becoming the artist that already lives inside of you. So this is why I'm changing the name. I wouldn't call it a full rebrand because it's just a layer deeper. But I'm doing this to honor not only who I am and have always been, but who you are and who you have always been. And yes, it's also a way to reach the people that I'm here to serve. But more than anything, this is to fully claim the identity of singer-songwriter, not only for myself, but for you as well. So stepping forward with this new name, it is the equivalent of saying, yes, I am a singer. Yes, I am a songwriter. And yes, I can help you become the artist you already are. Reawaken Your Voice was the doorway. Singer-songwriter is the home. So what can you expect now from this podcast? Well, this podcast is for aspiring singer-songwriters who want to find their voice, develop their voice, not only their singing voice, but their creative voice as well. It's for those who want to write original music, rebuild confidence in their voice, in their musical skills, in who they are as an artist. It's for those who are returning to music after time away. Those who want to create in a sustainable way without getting bogged down by perfectionism. It's for those who want to use songwriting as an instrument of healing and expression. We will talk about songwriting foundations, exploring your voice, building creative confidence, practicing vulnerability. We'll talk about developing songs, starting with that little song seed and following it through to its final expression in a full song. We'll talk about lyrics, song lyrics, lyric development, and vocal improvisation. I'll also share with you the behind the scenes of my recording process as I move into album creation. We will talk about creative identity, artistry, recording, early production, sharing music in gentle ways that are aligned with who you are now and what season of life you're in now. The person I'm speaking to, she's the woman who used to write lyrics in her notebook. Someone who once sang freely, maybe in choirs. Maybe you used to sing in a band, but maybe your voice went quiet somewhere along the way. She wants to return to music gently, with joy, expression, and the space to become who she truly is as an artist. And for all my male listeners, I just want you to know, men, we love you. You are so welcome here. So if you are stepping into your own creative chapter, if you're reclaiming your voice or writing your first or your 50th song, my one-on-one vocal breakthrough sessions are where we explore this one-on-one. You can go to reawakenyourvoice.com/coaching to learn more and book your session. You don't become a singer-songwriter when someone gives you permission, or when your work is polished, or when your album is out. You become one the moment you start creating, or creating again, even quietly. And this podcast, in its new form, is here to walk with you every step of the way. Thanks for listening, friend. If this episode moved you or inspired you in some way, would you please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or share this episode with someone who's been praying for a vocal breakthrough? Until next time, keep nurturing that song in your heart. Lots of love.